Are you new to Maya and want to create hard surface models? Maybe you tried hard surface modeling in Maya before and they're not happy the way that your 3D models are turning out. Well, there's nothing to fear because your boy JL is here. I created a Maya hard surface modeling tutorial for beginners. What's going on YouTube? It's jlmussi, and today we are talking about hard surface modeling, and more specifically hard surface modeling using sub-Ds. So sub-Ds is basically a way of working on a low-res cage but previewing a smooth result. Anytime that you're doing any high-end hard surface modeling, sub-D modeling might definitely be a way to go. Now, I've modeled both with poly modeling and sub-D modeling, and usually anytime that I want to do something like a vehicle or a gun or a mech, working with a sub-D preview is very similar to working with a vector file. So any of you graphic designers know that you can take a vector in Illustrator or even in Photoshop, and you can scale that out versus a rasterized or a pixelated image that if you scale up, you will actually have quality loss to that image. So this in essence is a perfect analogy, because if you create a sub-D model with the proper holding edges, you could always amp up the number of iterations in that sub-D and actually smooth out your mesh. So you never really have to worry about camera placement and seam faceting if you get too close. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with the video. Sub-D modeling and holding edges go together like French fries and ketchup. There are primarily three ways of creating holding edges in Maya, and we'll go ahead and take a look at each. So the first method of holding an edge is beveling. So I'm gonna go in here and I'll hit the 3 key, enable sub-Ds, and you see that my shape pretty much just crumples, and that's because it needs to be reinforced. So I'll go in here and I'm gonna go ahead and select all my edges. I'll go to mesh. Sorry, I'm pretty bad with these right here since I have them all hotkeyed, but I'm going to do a bevel, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring the fraction down a little bit. And now if I hit the 3 key, you see that it holds the shape a little bit better. What you could actually do as well is if you up the segments, you'll see that it'll actually reinforce that edge better. So that is one way of holding an edge. And if I take wireframe unshaded, you see that we get a pretty nice smooth result and still pretty much hold our shape. The next method I have is fencing, and this is one of my favorite ones. So I'll go in here with my multi-cut tool and I'll do Control and Shift. What I'm actually gonna do is I'll go to standard. When you're adding or when you're fencing here, you probably wanna go ahead and snap 2 increments. That way you're getting even edge distribution. So what you could do in your multi-cut tool, if you want it closer towards the edge, you can put a lower value here. I'm gonna put a value of 4. So with your multi-cut tool, if you hold down Control, you see that you're able to add a edge loop anywhere. But if we hold down Shift as well, you see that we're gonna go ahead and constrain to 4% increments, right? So I'll go ahead and add one there. I'll add one there, there. I'll orbit around, add one there. Add one here from the other side. It looks like we're all fenced in. So I'll go in here and I'll smooth this out, and it holds this pretty well. And if I wanted to reinforce this a bit more, I can go in here and add another set of loops. And I'm just gonna zoom in here, and you see that the more loops I add, it's gonna hold that shape a bit better. But I'm actually fine the way it held it with the first pass, so I'll leave it at that. So we have bevel, we have fencing. The last option for holding up your edges when doing sub D and hard surface modeling in Maya is creasing. So creasing, it's not one of my favorite methods. You can use it if you don't want to add extra topology. From my understanding of it, other packages don't support it. So if you are taking your mesh into ZBrush and doing an OBJ export, it's not going to go ahead and recognize that creasing. Therefore, you'll have to redo it within whatever package you are exporting it to. So the way creasing works is you don't necessarily add any edges, but you add a crease value to selected edges. Therefore, you're able to hold up that shape. So the creasing is right here under crease. So you go to mesh tools and then crease. Let's look at the options here. And I'll go ahead and just reset the settings here. I'll reset the tool. And we'll go ahead and exit out of that. And now we'll go ahead and go here. I'll enable the tool. So what it's telling us is that if we select the components that we want to crease, and then we middle mouse drag left to right, we'll go ahead and set a crease value. So I'll go ahead and drag all the components here, and I'll start scrubbing, and you see that it's starting to reinforce that edge. And that could actually take it all the way up and have a perfect square. But I'm going to go ahead and dial it down just a little bit. And there we go. So we held our shape via creasing. The next sub-D modeling concept to grasp is density versus volume. So if your topology, your initial topology is too low in resolution, you will have a greater amount of volume loss. This is exactly what I mean. So here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at these 3 cylinders that I have created. One is 8 divisions, one is 16, and one is 32, right? So same exact cylinder, just different amount of subdivisions, right? And what I did was I created a nerve circle to go along with it. And that represents pretty much our original volume. And I need to add holding edges to this before we begin. So I'll just quickly do that. And now, this is going to be more obvious from a top view here. But if I go and subdivide each one of these, you see how much volume this 8-sided one lost, right? Compared to the original shape, which is indicated by that nerve circle. And then if we jump over and we look at the 16-sided one, you see that it held up fine, but it did lose a little bit of volume. And then the 32 division cylinder barely lost any. So we'll go ahead and jump here from the top, and it's going to be even more obvious, right? So we'll just jump here to object mode. So the 8-sided one lost quite a bit of volume, the 16 just a little bit, and then the 32 didn't lose any volume at all. So keep that in mind when you are creating shapes. Do understand that if you go too low on your resolution and you're trying to match a specific volume, especially with your reference, you might have to up the volume or divisions of your mesh. So the next topic I want to talk about is UV distortion. Anytime that you deal with sub-D modeling, you might notice that your edges actually spread apart when you go into sub-D mode. And that can have effects on your UV and texture layouts, right? So you are going to get some stretching. And I'm going to show you how to go about basically eliminating that UV distortion that you initially get when enabling sub-Ds. So here we have basically the same shape. One is reinforced with holding edges and one is not. We'll go to our UV editor here, and we'll see that we have pretty much the identical UV layout. So if I go here and I enable my checkerboard, you'll see that if we select our first pattern here, this looks pretty good, right? We actually have all our UVs set, good textile density, and no stretching. But what happens with this, right? We have holding edges. So in theory, this should actually hold up. So we'll go ahead and select this one with the holding edges and enable sub-D mode. And we see that we have a lot of stretching near the edges. So what can we do about that? So what I usually do in these cases is I go ahead and apply a smooth to the mesh and match the final resolution that I want my mesh to be, okay? So in this example, I'll go ahead and go to mesh and I'll apply a smooth. And I'm gonna do that in object mode here. And I'll actually go ahead and add 2 division seems about the resolution that I want. And now we have a smooth mesh, and it's not subdivided, but it is smooth. Smooth and sub-Ds actually work very similar on what they do, and you see that even though I applied a smooth on here, it's still actually pushing our UVs and distorting them near the edges, just like enabling sub-Ds was, right? So from this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go take my faces here, and I wanna go ahead and add a unfold, but I'm gonna go to the options first. So I don't wanna change my UV layout here. I actually like the UVs. All I really wanna do is just unfold this just a little bit to get rid of the distortion near the edges. So I'll go ahead and make sure that layout UVs is turned off. I'll go ahead and hit apply, and there we go, right? So it actually went and just relaxed or unfolded these shells just a little bit more, and then I have my edges all nice and UV'd and no distortion near the borders. But just make sure that your UV layout is done before you add the smooth, and then you can go ahead and UV layout and then unfold, and you'll be good to go. So next, I want to talk about some of my keys to success when doing hard surface modeling with sub-Ds in Maya. So these are things that you want to think about before you actually start your model. And the very first one that comes to mind is the difficulty, right? So thinking back when I started modeling, and I think we all do it, when we first just start looking for a hard surface model to create, we want to look at something that is doable, but not too challenging, right? And I think that the actual challenge in hard surface modeling, a big part of it is actually dictated about how much curvature a hard surface object actually has. So for example, if I was to take a vehicle, let's just say a Lamborghini or a Maserati or even the Batmobile, something with a lot of curves, a lot of edge flow, that's going to be inherently harder to create than something that is very boxy or very square. So let's go ahead and dive in and let me explain. So here, for example, I have a curved surface and a flat surface, right? And if we enable sub-D here and sub-D mode here, we see that the shapes actually hold up relatively well. But what if I want to start adding some detail? And a lot of times, you know, when you start creating kind of your block out, you'll incrementally start adding divisions and start adding detail. Well, for a square shape or anything with a flat plane, it's actually pretty easy. And as a matter of fact, we see that your edge flow really doesn't matter. It could actually be pretty terrible. So let's just say that I wanted to add maybe something extruding from here, right? So maybe I'll add a division here, 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 and then maybe I'll do something like this. Pretty terrible, I know, and I definitely don't recommend this if you are applying for a company, showing wireframes, taking an art test. You didn't hear this from me, but in reality, you can have pretty terrible topology here. And as long as you actually have the right holding edge, right? So if we go in here and subdivide this on a flat area, it's really not going to matter that much. So you see the shape, regardless of the atrocity that we just committed here, it's still pretty much held up well, right? Even if we take a wireframe unshaded, we can't even see it. There's nothing that tells us that something's going on here unless we enable the wireframe, right? Now, on the other side, if we go here, so if we go here, I'll take my multi-cut tool and I'll add some pretty heinous topology here. We'll add this loop here. And now, if I subdivide this, what's going to happen is we're going to get pinching, right? So here you're getting the dreaded pinching. And basically pinching happens when you have two edges on a curved surface that are closer to the other one, so they're not evenly distributed, and you will get that pinching there. And pinching on curved surfaces, it is common. It's definitely something that can be negated. It really just takes a lot of practice, especially when you start adding detail. There are definitely strategies and workflows. I'm not going to go too deep in the rabbit hole with this on this video, but just know that time and experience does help creating detail in curved surfaces without pinching. So my next key to success is working from the largest shapes that should have the most subdivisions, especially if they're curved, and moving your way down to the smallest one with a lower number of subdivisions. So this is exactly what I mean. So here we are basically working from large to small, right? So the larger shape here, if I select this edge loop, you see that we have 20 edges, and then our medium shape here has 8, and then we work down to our smallest shape and it has 4. So if we subdivide this, this looks about right? So I go in here, I have a good number of subdivisions. If I want to zoom in here, my camera, okay, this looks okay, and this looks okay here, right? Imagine if you had this backwards, right? I've seen some artists that start out, they basically would have their larger shape maybe at 4 or 6, and then their smallest one maybe around 16 or 32. So what happens is when you're looking at these larger shapes, you really got to crank up the value of a smooth, if you're applying a smooth to your final shape, or the divisions within the sub-Ds themselves. And this could lead to performance issues or sub-D values that are way cranked up more than they need to be to achieve the proper subdivision levels. So my next key to success when creating hard surface models in Maya is figuring out early on in the pipeline what pieces of your model need to be animated or not. And this really comes down to the debate of should you model your object like it is created in real life and model every piece separate, or if you can get away with actually modeling everything as one piece and just faking the illusion that it's actually built from separate pieces. And I stand somewhere in the middle. I've done models where if it's needed for animation, I will create it as they are created in real life and model all the insides, the thickness of the panels. But if I can get away with it and there's really no need for animation, I will mainly build my meshes as one piece. So this is what I mean. In this scene, I have Ed 209 fighting RoboCop here. I wanted the gun to actually come through the leg like it did in the movies. So I had to actually model it like it was created in real life. I had to do a lot of research, gather a lot of reference, and then model all the parts and give the leg thickness so it would look proper when the actual animation took place. So here, if I scrub through the timeline, so you see here that the leg breaks away. revealing the gun holster. And then from this point, the gun holster will go ahead and pop out like it did in the movies. So I had to model all these panels with thickness. I had to model all the interior details, the holster, and then just go ahead and animate via some keyframe animation as well as some blend shapes. So for this model, it's pretty much the contrary of the other example that I showed you, right? So this car was modeled just to be pretty much a shell. There was no need for the doors to open. Therefore, I saved myself the trouble and the time to actually model the backside of the vehicle, or in this case, the door panels, right? If I needed the animation to actually support animation, if I wanted to open up all the doors, I would have created the actual backside like I did with the RoboCop leg pieces. But for this example, I didn't need to, so I didn't do it, right? So here, if I take this door panel and I isolate it, right, it's just a shell, right? I'm just faking the illusion that it's a separate piece, right? But it doesn't really have the thickness or all the detail on the backside of it. So that's the video, folks. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. And I really hope that this jumpstarts your hard surface modeling in Maya, especially when it comes to using sub-Ds. I would love to hear your thoughts on the video in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I also do the whole social media thing, so you can catch me on my Instagram and on my Facebook. And if you want to connect, you can reach out to me there as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.